Hi, it's Andy, and before we jump into today's episode, I want to tell you two quick stories about heroism. The first is in 1982, a day that I will never forget. Air Florida Flight 90 had crashed into the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. Rescue helicopters had arrived and dropped lifelines to survivors in the freezing waters. One man that was in the water, Arland Williams, repeatedly grabbed the line. But instead of saving himself, he passed it over to somebody else in the water, freezing as well. He did this over and over 5 times. Each time the helicopter came back, he gave the line away again. And by the time they returned again for him, he had slipped under the water. He never made it. There was no speech. There was no cameras, no followers, just selfless, quiet courage in a moment no one expected. Heroism is sometimes sacrifice, but most often it's simply choosing someone else before yourself. Another story is about a man named Rafe Esquith, who taught in a very tough Los Angeles neighborhood for decades. Rafe did not complain about lack of resources. He didn't blame the system, but he didn't lower his expectations of his students. Instead, he had his students read Shakespeare. He had his students stay after school voluntarily. And he built confidence through discipline and preparation. And most of all, he instilled a belief in them that they could compete anywhere. Many of his students went on to college, the first one in their families. Rafe once said, "There's no shortcuts. You just have to care more than anyone else expects." He didn't save kids from a burning building. He saved them from lowered expectations. That's quiet heroism. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the Leading Life Podcast, the place where leadership meets real life. Here is where we talk about leading with intention, living with clarity, and getting better results for the people we serve every single day. If you're ready to grow, you're in the right place. Right now, on today's episode, be the hero in somebody's story today. Hi, I'm Andy Zook. This is the Leading Life Podcast. This podcast is about what it truly means to lead. First, leading yourself with integrity, courage, love, and purpose, and then leading others in a way that builds lives that matter and legacies that last. Because leadership doesn't begin with a title. It begins with choices we make every single day. And each episode brings real-world wisdom and practical tools to help you become the strongest, wisest, and most intentional version of yourself at work, at home, and in the moments of your life that matter most. I promise you, no fluff, no gimmicks, just honest leadership principles and actions you can use today. And today's message is simple and powerful, and it's still incredibly practical. Be the hero in somebody's story. You guys hear me finish every episode with that statement. And it means today, not someday, not when you feel ready, not when it's convenient. Right now, today, let's talk about what it actually means. So something that happened to me that really kind of drove this home for me and to write this episode was I had went out to check out a couple spots for my daughter's upcoming birthday. And I went to this other venue and took some pictures to send to her. And I'm in my car, I'm texting her and sending these photos. And I hear the most unsettling, loud boom sound that I had ever heard. It was just this loud, unsettling crash. And I kind of looked up from the car real quick. I didn't see anything. I was like, what was that? Was that like a truck backfiring? But it was way more intense than that. And I didn't see a truck around me, so it couldn't have been that. And then I started seeing people run out of the venue that I was just at. And I dropped my phone. I think I even let the car running. And I just ran with them. And as I was running, I saw where we were going. And there was a car, an SUV, turned over on its side. It had crashed into like a cement pole. And everybody came running out of all the local businesses. This is downtown Orlando. They started to try to break open the car to get this woman out of the car. And as I ran up, I said to myself, there's no way anybody survived this. I mean, it was horrific. The whole front end of that SUV was just packed in, like just gone. And so everybody's calling, 911 and trying to get people there. And someone on the phone is saying, 911 is saying, don't try to get her out. But these 3 or 4 guys that were already there before me had ripped open this part of the car and got her out, and they laid her on the ground. Obviously, I'm not a medic. I'm not law enforcement. I didn't perform some dramatic rescue. I just simply walked over to that woman and stayed with her and helped her stay calm. And the look of terror on her face was something I'll never forget. She was just shaken and scared to the bone. So I grabbed her hand and stayed with her until the ambulance arrived. I spoke calmly to her. I helped her breathe. I told her everything would be okay, to just stay calm. She kept trying to grab her ribs. Obviously, I think probably some of them had got broken in the crash. Because imagine that jolt. I mean, they had to hit it 50, 60 miles per hour. And then the jolt of the airbag pushing her back. So she kind of hit the pole and then got pushed back. And she said, my husband, what about my husband? And I yelled over to the guys trying to get the car, get into the car. And I said, is the husband there? And they're like, we see him. But he was unconscious. And so I stayed with her again for a while. And she said, Andy, is he, I said, my name is Andy. And she said, is my husband okay? And I yelled back over, any word on the husband? And one of the guys had yelled out, he's alive. He's okay. And so I was able to tell her that her husband was alive and everything was going to be okay. And as I was saying that, we heard the ambulance, and I said, listen, just stay calm. The ambulance is here now. And I said, they're going to put you into the gurney and get you into the ambulance. And I just told her, God bless, and I got up and walked away. And that's it. It reminded me of something powerful. Heroism is not always this big dramatic event. It's just being present. It's being steady, and it's being the calm in the middle of chaos. Most of us underestimate how powerful that can be. Because, along the way, we've confused heroism with fame. We've confused impact with visibility, and we've confused leadership with titles. But the real hero moments, they're usually quiet, and they happen every single day. They happen in our homes, our offices, in parking lots, in conversations, in hospitals. Heroism is not about saving the world. It's about stabilizing someone's world in a moment where it feels unstable. And that ultimately is leadership. And that's why I end the episode with that statement. Last year, I spent some time with my father in his last couple weeks on earth. And one day, while I was there with him, helping him throughout his day, we had got back from a doctor's appointment. And my father in that moment had lost the ability to walk on his own. And he was feeling really sick. So me and my sister called the ambulance. We got him to the hospital. They took him into the ER because they wanted to make sure to check all the vitals and everything first before they moved to the next step. And so as I sat by my father's side at the hospital, I held his hand and I watched this team of nurses jump into action. One of his nurses was a young woman named Shanita. And this is at Franciscan Health in Lafayette, Indiana. So I hope someone lets her know she's in this episode. And I mean, Shanita was spectacular. She was the hero of that night. Not only the hero for my father, but for me as well, and trying to help us stay positive and hopeful during this scary situation with my father losing his ability to walk. And what was amazing about this young woman is that she does this patient after patient all night long. And she gives it her all. For me, she was the hero in that moment. And these heroes are all walking amongst us every day. They just don't get the spotlight. In another story, in 2007 on a New York City platform, there was a young man suffering a seizure, and he had fallen onto the tracks as a train was approaching. Well, the crowd around them froze, but a construction worker named Wesley Autry was standing there with his 2 daughters. He didn't have any special training. He didn't overthink it. He didn't look for permission. He just jumped down onto the tracks. He pressed the man into a drainage trench, and he shielded him with his own body as the train passed over them. They all survived. And when they interviewed him later, Autry said something simple. I did what I felt was right. No speech, no branding, no self-promotion. Just presence, just action. That's quiet heroism. And so when we talk about this, like I said, we think of firefighters, soldiers, first responders, and superhuman acts amongst us. And yes, those are heroes for sure. Those men and women get my utmost respect, but it is also the spouse who stays patient when their partner is struggling. It's also the manager who defends someone that's not in the room. It's a friend who answers the phone at midnight. It's a coworker who shuts down gossip. It's the parent who stays calm when their child is melting down. And it's the stranger who says, I'm here. Hero energy isn't loud, it's steady. And it lowers anxiety. It creates safety. And it changes emotional environments. And sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is simply not walk away. Here's something most people don't talk about. When something chaotic happens, the brain defaults to self-preservation. People either freeze, avoid, run, or wait for somebody else to jump in. It's called diffusion of responsibility. And we assume someone else will handle it, but leaders override that instinct. They decide, you know what? If I'm here, I step forward. That's it. Not because they're fearless, but because they've already chosen who they are. Leadership is a decision before it's a skill. And why elite leaders do this differently in business and family and community is they understand something critical. They regulate environments. They don't add panic. They don't amplify chaos. They don't disappear when it's uncomfortable. They slow down the moment. Yeah, they lower the temperature in the room. They offer clarity when others' emotions are spiking. They protect people when they're vulnerable and they speak calmly when others can't. That's hero behavior. Yeah, and you don't need a title to do it. You just need the intention. But most people don't step forward because they don't want responsibility. They're afraid of looking foolish. They think they're not qualified. They assume someone else will do it, or they're just distracted. But here's the reality. The world doesn't need more spectators. It needs steadiness, and steadiness is the choice. So let's talk about you. You right now listening. Pause and ask yourself, who around you needs your steadiness right now? Who around you feels unseen, who feels overwhelmed, or feels anxious? Maybe someone that feels alone. Where have you been hesitating to step forward? At work, at home, in a friendship, in your marriage, in your community? What small act of courage could you take today? It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be filmed on a smartphone. It doesn't have to be theatrical, just intentional, because you may never know how much your presence matters in someone's hardest moment. But I promise you this, they'll never forget it. And here's your leadership edge for this episode. Heroism is rarely about strength, it's about stability. You don't need a cape, you don't need the applause, you don't need the recognition. You just need presence. And presence is one of the rarest and most powerful currencies in our distracted world. It won't make headlines. But a teacher who notices a student is withdrawn and stays with them after class to help. A manager who quietly protects an employee's reputation in a meeting. Maybe a husband who sits with his wife through chronic illness without trying to fix it. These stories are not going to trend. They're not going to be on your news feed. They transform lives because in someone's worst moment, stability feels like rescue. So here's your call to action for this episode. Today, just look for the moment. It might be small. It might be subtle. But when you see it, step forward. Be the calm voice. Be the listening ear. Be the steady presence. Be the one who doesn't walk away, because leadership isn't about how loud you are. It's about how steady you are. And you may never know the full impact of your calm strength in someone else's chaotic moment. But I guarantee you this. You will change more lives through quiet presence than through loud performance. And so that is my episode. I hope this impacted you for the better. And please, if it did, leave me a rating or review on whatever platform you hear me on, and please hit subscribe so you don't miss another episode. I'm Andy Zook. This is the Leading Life Podcast, and until next time, I want you to lead with purpose, live with intention, and keep becoming who you were meant to be, but most importantly, go out and be the hero of somebody's story today. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you on the next episode. Bye.